there once again, and we're back. So we've been discussing the feminine political structures of several different cultures over time and over space. And what we've come to now, we took a break, and we sort of have already discussed the feminine structures, and we're going to move out of that and into the masculine structures. And so let's take a minute and review, okay? So we had our timeline here, and we discussed the cities in the Neolithic times, and one of the commonalities that we really found here, and that this source will tell us, this college textbook for poli-sci will tell us, is that these cities, as you recall, had economy but no central authority, and that source tells us that where the economy provides, government is less necessary. Ooh, so we have historical data, and then we have a new, up-to-date source that tells us the same thing. Here in native North America, we talked about political structures, and we talked about some of the commonalities that we'll find among those political structures. Things like true democracy, where each adult gets a vote. Consensus, where everyone has to sign off and agree, and that any decision cannot be put into effect until even the people that vote against it have sort of whittled it to what their needs and concerns are, and then the people who want to vote for it get their needs and concerns met, and so it becomes, in the end, a grand collaboration and compromise that everyone can get behind, and so no one gets left out in the political process that we call consensus. Okay, we talked about that. We talked about no central authority as a running commonality through the Neolithic all the way through native North America, okay? No central authority is a big player in political systems that are constructed by women. Now, obviously the Native Americans had a chief, but remember that we said that the chief doesn't have any real power. So he doesn't have all of our resources that he can use then to sort of like, crush our rebellion, or he can't punish us if we, don't agree with him and or follow him. So remember that the chiefs have no real power, but instead they have respect. It's this idea that obedience is not necessary, not obey, just respect. Okay, so we have this idea of respect, not obey. Okay, so that's why there's really no central authority. Yes, the chief is there, and he's respected for his wisdom, and people ask his advice for many things. The clan mother is there, and she's respected for her wisdom, and people ask her advice for many things. But they don't have to do what they say, okay? And there's no real recourse. There's no real punishment. There's no real thing to take away from you, if you don't. Every single person is allowed tons of, true freedom. Okay. We really went through a lot of that. If you missed that, watch part 1, okay? Because this is just the review, so I'm running through. Okay, and we noticed that these structures have built into them, steps that discourage central authority. And so you can see that the system itself is built to where the chief will never have real power because he doesn't have all of our resources, and or he's not able to punish us, which of course comes back to resources in the end too. Okay, so we talked about this. We looked at this. Did we look at this? We did not look at this. Did we look at this? Okay, so we did not look at this yet. I want to talk about this. This is what I mean when I say that the people have all the resources, that the central central power has all the resources, okay? This, in particular, is what we're all familiar with when we see a diagram of what's called a stratified society, okay? I'm going to start using some different terms now that we're moving into the masculine political structures. I'm going to start using these terms, stratified and egalitarian. This is the diagram that most of us see in school for a stratified society. You can see there's the many down here at the bottom of the triangle, and then up here at the top there's the one little king, right? Or we could say the elite, perhaps 1%, perhaps 10%, but no bigger than that, right? Okay, so the elite are up here, and down here are all the, slaves, working class, those of us who are scraping by, living paycheck to paycheck, right? Okay, so this is what we normally see, and unfortunately, this is very deceptive. This looks very stable, right? Let's come back to that in a second. So if this is stratified, where we have different classes and the elite on top, this is egalitarian. Looks really different, right? Okay, let's get to that in a second. The reason that this is deceptive is that it looks really stable. Look at this triangle. It looks really stable. There's a big fat base and then a tiny little top. Well, that looks structurally sound, okay? But this is not the correct picture. We're leaving something out. This is what it really should look like. This is a representation of our resources, okay? So where are all the resources located? At the top. Where are the least amount of resources located? At the bottom. So this gives us a more correct picture and a better understanding of why central authority is quite unstable. All right? If you don't believe me, well, what happened to Greece, what happened to Rome, empires rise and fall every single day. Let's go to a source. This source right here. This is a college textbook. This source tells us central authority is unstable. So I took the same words right from that source. Central authority is unstable. Okay. Why? Because it doesn't really look like this. It really looks like this. Boop, 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 boop. It's teetering. All its weight is on the top. This makes all these people down here share this many resources. And then these people share this many resources, and then this is actually the gap that exists between these people who are, in America, let's say, the middle class. All the middle class, even the upper middle class, is below this line. This line and up is reserved for the uber rich, okay? This line and up is reserved for, at the very most, 10%. See how the one little king goes over to this huge slice? And all of these people, even these tiny little ones right under the king, we would say the military, we would say the upper middle class in America, all below here. Okay? Many sharing a very small amount of resources. Few having the bulk of all of our resources. All right? So you can see here why I'm going to say again at some other point in this video that central authority actually is an unstable system. And history has shown us that over and over and over again, and I'll come back to that again. Here we're going to talk about egalitarian. This is what the diagram for an egalitarian system looks like. Very different from the pyramid and very different from the upside down triangle, right? Okay, it's flat. As you can see, it has slight peaks throughout it, because remember that in egalitarian cultures, some people do have a little bit more than others, right? But notice that no one dips below the baseline. Everybody has what they need. Okay? So here is the diagram for what stratified cultures look like when represented. Okay? Here is what egalitarian cultures look like when represented. The whole thing collapses down on itself, and everyone shares in the baseline, and then some few people have a little bit more than others. Actually, it looks kind of like a heart monitor. I kind of like that. Okay, so let's move on. Now that we've talked about stratified and egalitarian, we can use those terms more, and we can use some of our sources. So let's look here. From this source, a college textbook, okay, we find that in stratified cultures and stratified structures, there is a small group of elites, okay, and that money and status and political power are how people gain advantage in this kind of system, and that those things are generally inherited. College textbook tells you right there. All right, in egalitarian systems, everybody shares power. Even a lowly little peon, like a housewife, you know, has one vote, just like the chief. All right? Advantage is gained in these systems through personal skill or experience. Okay, so there we come back to that idea of respect, right? The chief is not the chief because he has all the power. He's the chief because people respect him and seek his guidance. You know, he's proved himself over and over again to be the good guy in situations, all right, where people, individual people, have had to trust him and be on a personal level with him and see his real personality. It says here the egalitarian structures are more fluid and flexible, all right? Now that's great. What does that mean? It means it allows us the most freedom. I feel like a lot of people feel very constrained and they're not really sure why, right? It's this invisible sort of thing, okay? That's because we're not living in an egalitarian structure where really our power is in our own hands. Let's move on. Okay, from this source, we're going to move on to another source. Here we go back to this one. College textbook. All right, it's going to tell us. In stratified societies, the lower class has to work harder for less reward. So, oftentimes in stratified cultures, we think that this lower class, they're lazy. They're the lazy ones, right? Yet they're the ones cleaning the toilets. They're the ones toiling in the fields. They're the ones building the houses. They're the ones, doing the yard landscape. These are the hardest jobs, okay? They require the most, physical labor. So you see why it says, in these cultures, these people labor more for less reward. It's not that they're lazy. It's that we value their jobs less. We put less value on the work that they do, but they're actually doing the bulk of the work. That's what that means. Okay, so now we also find, this one's going to talk about egalitarian structures as well, and it says in egalitarian structures, there are fewer material rewards or duties. So again, back to the chief. He doesn't get money for being the chief, right? And he actually has less duties than the elite ruling class in the stratified culture, because the chief doesn't make all my decisions, right? We the people, We make our decisions. We're the ones responsible. We take our responsibility. We own our power. We own ourselves, our lives, our responsibility. So he has less duties. These are commonalities. This is what an egalitarian structure looks like. Less material rewards for the rulers, less duties. Okay? Let's keep on moving. Let's do another source here. This source, college textbook, is going to tell us that in stratified societies, the people are more constrained by their jobs and by the rules and laws of their societies. So we think modernization, we think, ooh, that's progress, that's good, okay? But when we start to look at all the different systems that have ever existed, we start to see something that becomes clearer and clearer, and that is in stratified societies, people, regular people, are more constrained by their jobs and by the rules of society than are, for example, people in egalitarian structures. It says foragers work when hungry, and when they don't like something, they walk away. They have the choice. They don't have to just go along with it because they were told to. They don't like something, they just walk away. Now, obviously, I'm not going to suggest that we all go back to foraging, okay? No, I'm going to suggest something in the middle. We can see stratified. We can see egalitarian. Now, let's use, a little of this, a little of that, right? We can make it happen. All right, that's for a future discussion. Let's move on to Scandinavia. Scandinavia is in this timeline right here in the 1970s. Here is really where we see feminine political structures, okay? Now we're going to move into masculine political structures. In the 1970s, we're going to look at Scandinavia, all right? I'm going to read you this paper that I have already prepared a few years ago when I finished college, all right? In 2005, more than 40 countries around the world had instituted electoral quotas calling for no less than 30% women in parliament. This critical mass, so the term is critical mass when you reach 30% women in your lawmaking body. For most of the world, that's parliament. For us in America, that's Congress, okay? So this critical mass has been agreed upon by the UN as the percentage of women in a lawmaking body needed to represent the feminine agenda. Okay, so the UN knows that there is a difference between the feminine agenda and the masculine agenda. Whoa, I'm not just talking about la-di-blah, right? Okay, this is now. Okay, countries who, as of now, have achieved critical mass include but are not limited to Iceland, Spain, Norway, Sweden, Argentina, Costa Rica, the Netherlands, Germany, Belgium, Ecuador, Nepal, South Africa, and Rwanda. Okay, so these countries have reached 30% women in government. This is happening now. All right. According to a study by the Inter-Parliamentary Union in 2008, when represented in high numbers, women lawmakers attend more to the special needs of previously marginalized groups. They are more likely than their male counterparts to advocate health care, education, peace, and the environment. All right, so we see again, there is a difference between the feminine agenda and the masculine agenda. You see it? It's right there. Because of Scandinavia in the 1970s began putting women into their parliaments in high numbers, and they have kept it since then. And because of that, we now have data that shows this was the political landscape when males were all in charge and there wasn't 30% or more females in the lawmaking body. This is the political agenda now after, since the 70s, we can see how it's changed by introducing a certain percentage of women, which is not quite half, but close enough to where when women say, I'd like to talk about an agenda that you men never talk about, and I'd like to not be made fun of about it, I'd like to have some support, because I at least now have enough women here to where they understand what I'm talking about, because they live the same kind of life that I live, and they have the same kind of difficulties that I have that you men don't have. We have to have a certain percentage in the lawmaking body in order for people to start talking about, women to start talking about these things that they don't get supported. If it's full of men and not a lot of women, then these issues, they just get shut down. No, that's not important. That's not important. Well, with 30% women, they say, oh, hold on. Actually, that is important. Okay? The masculine agenda cannot understand or represent the feminine agenda. The feminine agenda must represent itself. Okay, here, the World Bank correlates gender with corruption and reports data showing less corruption in parliaments with more women. Oh! Okay, in his 20-year study of the Swedish parliament, Wagnerrod found that women mentioned social policy, family policy, elderly care, health care as campaign issues 75% of the time, while men mentioned them only 44% of the time. According to a survey by the Interparliamentary Union in 2008, as time passes with women represented in large numbers, men begin to recognize and prioritize women's issues more often, giving the overall political agenda a more balanced presence. So men cannot know. We have to be there telling them. Our values have to be heard, and over time, men start to hear them, and they start to understand them. We cannot expect them to understand them until we start talking about them. Okay, here we go. Yale's University Environmental Performance Index of 132 countries. Of the top 15, this is environmental, of the top 15, 14% represented women at 20% or higher. This is a correlation. What do you have when you have women represented in large numbers? You have better environmental policy, because women, all right, are connected to the environment. Why? Who knows? Why? Who knows? But there it is. In places where women are not big percentages of the lawmaking body, guess what gets the shaft? The environment. Why? Who knows? But there it is. It's a feminine value. In 2010, Forbes magazine published findings of the Gallup World Happiness Poll, ranking 155 countries. Of the top 10, 9 represented 20% women or higher. In addition, the top 7 all represented women at higher than 30%, like 40%. Okay, that's the top 7 happiest countries in the world. What do they all have in common? Lots of women in their lawmaking body. We got to wake up, right? We got to know this. This is stuff we don't get to know, okay? So this is good, right? This makes us feel hopeful. Okay. We're done with this information. You want more information on this? I tried to read the sources when I could, all sourced, all current. This is happening now. We can see the feminine principle. Thank you, Scandinavia. We can see the feminine principle now. We don't just have to talk about the past. We can talk about now. What do women do when they're put into government in large numbers? What are the feminine values that are previously unseen when masculine mind frames rule our governments? Well, the special needs of marginalized groups. Women want everybody to be taken care of. Healthcare, education, peace, and the environment. Why don't we have peace around the world? I mean, more peace at least. Okay, because we don't have as many women as we need in government.